We're talking to Dr. Al Koller. Okay,
Yeah.
Dr. Koller, are you with us?
I am indeed, Ruthie. Thank you for having me on your program.
Dr. Koller has a lovely background, tremendous credentials, and I want to share them with you. He has a doctorate of business administration and management. He also has quantitative methods from the Florida State University, a master's in systems management, Florida State University, a Bachelor of Arts in mathematics and physics, Florida State University, and he was a high school salutatorian for Titusville High School, Florida. Now, his professional experience is very expansive. He says that after 50 years in the aerospace industry and 2 years of retirement, Dr. Koller has been called back to duty as principal investigator for SpaceTEC, the National Science Foundation's National Aerospace Resource Center, and managing director of SpaceTEC Partners. He's overseeing operations of SpaceTEC. It's the National Science Foundation's National Center of Excellence for Aerospace Technical Education. He initially retired in the summer of 2007 after 15 years as a senior educational administrator and a NASA career as an engineer and program manager at the Kennedy Space Center for more than 32 years. Dr. Koller, tell us exactly how SpaceTEC serves our country's needs.
SpaceTEC is a national center of excellence for the National Science Foundation. Its entire focus is certification of aerospace technicians in the United States of America. And we are currently the only national certifying body for aerospace technicians. And we are the only body that does performance-based certification testing. If I had to pick a motto, it would be, it isn't only what you know, it's what you can do that's important. And our job is to certify technicians for the future in the aerospace business in the United States of America.
Dr. Koller, you were on the launch team for the Apollo 11 program. What do you remember most about that?
Well, I remember that was the culmination of an awful lot of work that went on over quite a number of years, and it was a magical time. It was a time when an awful lot of people all over the world were focused on the United States manned space effort to put a person on the moon and bring them back safely. And we were able to do that in a very short time. And as you may recall, that was as a result of President Kennedy's mandate to take people to the moon and bring them back within the decade. That was the 1960s.
Dr. Koller, how do you feel about the changing priorities of our current program?
Well, like a lot of people who lived through our early space program, I have mixed emotions and conflicting thoughts about where we're headed. I think commercial space, its time has come. It should have been a priority a long time ago, but I have real concerns about how we're doing it because it seems to me that we see an either or, and I think that would be a mistake. The NASA and military programs that won the space race are important elements for our continued success, and we need to keep those active. The commercial elements emerging need time to succeed. They frankly need the same chance that NASA had in the early days and all the others who were part of that space race in the late 50s and 60s to make mistakes and learn from them. And those who have any background in science know that you learn the most from errors. So making commercial people perform to perfection each time they launch at this point is unrealistic and probably unfair. And we need to cut them some slack. The approach that uses commercial in conjunction with government. I think choosing one approach without the other is a mistake that will cost us the lead we've held in space exploration for more than 50 years. And I think we're better than that. We can do both, and we can do them well.
Dr. Koller, what will our space program change? How will it change for the average American? And what will happen to our space workers?
I guess a lot depends on choosing a focus for our space program. In terms of how it will change for the average American, it will immediately, we're about to take a huge step back from manned human space flight for this country. When the shuttle program terminates later this year, we will be dependent entirely on other countries to take people to the space station. And yeah, it's an international space station, but it was built by Americans essentially with the coordination and cooperation of 15 other countries. So to me, it takes us down a notch if we have to step back and depend on anyone, the Russians, the Japanese, to take our own astronauts to the space station. And that's why it's important that we foster this commercial space venture that has gotten its beginnings with the SpaceX activities. The Falcon 9 that flew a couple of months ago and will fly again in another couple of months. It begins to give us a niche back at least to low Earth orbit using commercial space flight rather than government space flight. And what's driving that is, and I'm sure you know, is budget costs. And we are, in fact, a capitalist country, and so we understand competition and we understand the need and the importance of bringing commercial activities to the fore, and that will happen. So what it will mean for the average American is that we will have a hiatus. We'll have a time when we are not leading in space, and that hasn't happened in the history of our space program. That's going to be difficult for some of us to swallow. What will happen to all the people who are in that program currently, the NASA program, remains to be seen, but it appears to me that given the tsunami that we're in terms of the economy, there will be a lot of very talented people, engineers and scientists and technicians, without comparable jobs. They will have to find other career paths, and they will have to change the directions of their lives. And that is a tragedy. I saw it happen in following Apollo when it was a much bigger program, but a much more stout environment economically to get into. And I think we're in for some trouble.
Now, what do you think is the most important thing to keep in mind as we experience a new era in space?
It depends on what we do, but we were all part of a big team that was doing something that was pushing the envelope for all of mankind. We were involved in projects that were bigger than ourselves. They weren't jobs, they were careers, and they were challenges, and they were adventures. Maybe I could say it that way. Maybe that captures it the best. We were part of mankind's greatest adventure. And it didn't matter what you did. If you were a custodian or a clerical person or a scientist or an astronaut, we all had equal feelings about the importance of what we did, and the dedication that it required was pretty well accepted. And it was just a fun time to be a part of things. And I think we lose that if we're not really careful. We have a program that has grown very routine, and we take it for granted. And I think that's about to come to an end.
If you could change just one thing about the space program, what would that be?
I think currently our space program is without good vision or direction. We are a country of very ambitious and capable people with the strength to accomplish a lot of things, but unfortunately we seem to be best at playing catch-up rather than planning ahead and pushing forward in new fields. And if you know anything about space history, you know that's how we got into it the first time. It was a space race with the Russians, and it came out of military challenges, and we were playing catch-up for a long time. We did not launch the first man into space. The Russians did that. But we followed pretty closely, and we won that one. What we need now is a single unifying goal to give us what I call alignment, which is a focus on an overall objective so that all of our decisions work toward a strategy that can be agreed upon by most of our citizens. You'll never get everybody to agree on a single thing, but right now we have so many divergent views of where we should go, what we should be doing. There's a whole group of people that want to go to an asteroid, and another whole bunch who want to take us back to the moon, and another group that want to take us to Mars, and another group that don't want to do any of that. We need a single focusing goal, and if I could have one wish, it would be that our leaders would settle on a compelling goal that stretches our technical reach without breaking the bank, and that's where the commercial side comes in.
A common complaint right now is that the space program is way too expensive. How would you respond to that if you were in charge?
First, I'd acknowledge that the way we operate today probably is more costly than it should be, and it can be streamlined. A colleague of mine once noted that NASA is a group of loosely federated fiefdoms constantly at war with one another. And unfortunately, that's true. The NASA Center system has always been a competitive one. And that's probably stretching it a little bit to say that they're little independent fiefdoms constantly at war, but our whole attitude in NASA, our government, and our nation in general seems to be right now, every man for himself and anything goes. And until we see our way to agreeing on goals and values that allow us to engage issues and projects that are bigger than ourselves, like we did for Apollo, we'll continue to expend time, energy, and resources fighting amongst ourselves. And that's how you destroy a great country and certainly a great space program. Such a strategy is always self-defeating. If you don't believe me, just take a look at our political history over the past 20 years, and you'll see that we have managed to fight ourselves down to almost the lowest level of survival. And I'm not a historian and I'm not a philosopher, but I do understand the value of teamwork, and I know how to run an organization. And there are four things that are needed in any venture to create and operate a successful team. And I will tell you that whatever else spaceflight is, it is absolutely teamwork. It's not a single entity ever. I've studied organizations for a long time, and I can tell you that there are four basic elements. One is a compelling mission. That's where it starts. A compelling mission, something that everybody can sign up to and say, that one's worth doing, let's go do it. Second is a creative climate, a way in which you engage and excite the people who are working toward that compelling mission. A third one is the capable people who make up the team. How we select those people, what their capabilities are, what they can do becomes paramount to how we succeed. And finally, committed performance. Once you get them all together and you aim them in the right direction, how do you keep them committed toward that goal? Those are the four pieces. I call them my C4 model for team building, and it begins with a visionary goal that we've been talking about for a long time now, and I hope that we hear soon from the very top in this country what that goal is for our space program, because without that, it's impossible to build a winning team. You need all four elements, but I think we're closer to having the other three than we are to having a real goal for our space future, and I am frankly troubled by that. We've been struggling for a long time, and it's time to step up and choose one element and stay with it for a while. And frankly, our political system makes it difficult to commit to long-term goals like this one would be, because we make changes every couple of years.
So you feel that we make these changes every time we change administration?
I'm afraid that we have, and if you look back over our NASA history, it's true for a long, long time, and that can be solved. And maybe it begins this evening when we see the State of the Union address and what happens in the Congress, where people begin to sit next to one another and talk a little bit about where we're headed. You know, spaceflight is, in my opinion, one of the fulfillments of humanity's destiny. It's where we're headed in the future. It's pretty easy for me to get excited about it because I had the opportunity to live it in the day when we hadn't been to the moon, hadn't been there and done that. What do we do now? And we need to recapture that the thoughts that went into that recognize that that's not an end product or an end point. It is the start of a long journey over which we learn how to create new knowledge and spin off new technologies and grow our technical prowess. And America has been in that leadership role for more than 50 years. And I think we're facing some really tough times if we don't pick one goal and stick to it.
You are with the E3 company, is that correct?
And that's a little private consulting firm I've run for about 40 years that does management consulting. But my real focus, as you said at the beginning, is SpaceTEC. That's an organization that has been funded by the National Science Foundation now for 8 years, and its goal is to train and certify aerospace technicians for the future, so the certification process, and that's what SpaceTEC is all about.
And we hope you'll come back in the future when you make your milestones.
We'd be delighted and looking forward to the next steps in our space program.
And we'll be watching for you. Thank you so much for your courtesy.
Quite welcome.